the one invention everyone forgot that changed cars forever. Back in the early 20th century, cars were a lot more dangerous than they are today. If you've ever driven an old beater that doesn't have a whole lot of safety features, you know just how true this is. But one invention from the 1960s has made modern cars much safer than they used to be. Even though hardly anyone remembers it or knows its name, it was called the crumple zone. Let's talk about it. Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. Before we get into today's video, I want to give a huge shout out to a supporter for asking this question. If you'd like to submit your own question, check the link in the description. Now back to the video. What exactly is a crumple zone? It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a part of the car that's designed to crumple. You see, before the mid-20th century, cars were built very differently. They had very little in the way of safety features because cars themselves were much smaller. They also didn't travel nearly as fast. In fact, the posted speed limit in most US cities wasn't much more than 25 miles per hour. This meant that even if two cars did collide, it was usually not at a high enough speed to cause a serious accident. All that changed with the advent of larger and faster vehicles. By the 1960s, cars were being built bigger and people were driving them faster. Highways were also becoming more common and allowed drivers to really get up some speed. The problem was, the cars weren't built to withstand the impact of a high-speed collision. Back then, the average car could only withstand an impact at about 5 miles per hour without causing serious damage to the vehicle itself, or even injury to the driver. Of course, there were some exceptions to this rule. Luxury cars tended to be a bit beefier than other vehicles, but even they weren't built to handle anything more than a low-speed fender bender. This all changed on September 3, 1966, when a man named Niels Bohlin patented a new kind of vehicle structure that would change the automotive industry forever. Now, to understand what Boring did, you have to understand how cars are built. Up until the mid-20th century, the body of a car was one solid piece, meaning the front of the vehicle was just as sturdy as the sides or the back. What Boring realized was that this was actually a bad thing. When a car is hit head-on, the impact should be absorbed by the front of the car, which is why he came up with the idea for the crumple zone, which is basically a weaker front end that can easily collapse and absorb the impact of a collision instead of passing it along to the rest of the car. This might sound like a pretty simple idea, but it was actually a radical concept. At the time, the front end of a car was just as strong as the rest of the vehicle's frame. This meant that if you were driving a car from the 1960s and you got in a head-on collision, your chances of survival were slim to none. Today, however, you can get in a head-on collision at relatively high speed and walk away unscathed, thanks in large part to the crumple zone. But not everyone was excited about this innovation. Boring's idea was put to the test shortly after it was patented, when he crashed a Volvo into a brick wall at 31 miles per hour. While the crash was successful in demonstrating that the crumple zone worked, it also demonstrated another problem. The vehicle's engine and fuel tank were made of metal as well, and they had not been moved far enough back in the event of a collision. These components could come forward and puncture the passenger compartment, causing severe injury or even death. This led Boring and his team to further refine the design of the crumple zone, so it could be properly installed in the vehicles of the future. Despite the obvious benefits of the crumple zone, car manufacturers were hesitant to adopt it. See, it would cost them money. For starters, it would be more expensive to build a crumple zone into every car. But even if they did, consumers might not want to buy cars with such weak frames. After all, the stronger a car's frame is, the less likely it is to get damaged, which means it would last longer. So if the crumple zone made the car more likely to get damaged, consumers might not be too keen on buying them. But as the decade wore on, and automakers realized how dangerous traditional frames were, the crumple zone became more and more popular. By the 1970s, the vast majority of cars on the road had crumple zones, even if their manufacturers didn't necessarily advertise it. It took years for the public to learn that these cheaper, flimsy-looking vehicles were actually safer than the big, sturdy ones from the 1960s. As the years went on, the crumple zone became a key component in the safety of any vehicle. Even today, if you look at the front end of a modern car, you can see that it's very obviously weaker than the rest of the vehicle's frame. The bumpers are made of plastic, and the entire front end is very flimsy. This is done on purpose, so that in the event of a collision, the front end absorbs all the impact rather than allowing it to travel into the vehicle's passenger compartment. These days, the crumple zone isn't just in the front end either. Many vehicles also have crumple zones in the rear and along the sides to help protect passengers in the event of a T-bone collision. But while the basic concept of the crumple zone hasn't really changed since 1966, the way it's built has come a long way. See, in the early days of the crumple zone, it was considered to be an afterthought, something that could easily be added to any vehicle during the manufacturing process. As a result, many cars ended up with poorly designed crumple zones that weren't very effective. Today, however, the crumple zone is an integral part of the vehicle's design. Engineers use computer-aided design programs to create crumple zones that are perfectly suited to the vehicle they are being installed in. This means that each car on the road today has a crumple zone that can effectively absorb the impact of a collision without doing damage to the rest of the vehicle. In addition to improving the safety of all vehicles on the road, the crumple zone has also helped reduce insurance costs. Before the 1970s, insurance companies had to pay out a lot of money to cover the cost of injuries sustained in automobile accidents. But as the crumple zone became more common, the number of serious injuries decreased, which lowered insurance costs for everyone. Today, the crumple zone is estimated to save over 20,000 lives per year and prevent more than 300,000 injuries. So while it's not exactly a household name, it's safe to say that the crumple zone is one of the most important inventions of the 20th century. And now I want to hear from you. What do you think is the most important invention of the 20th century? Comment below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out some of our other videos. We have a channel that covers all sorts of interesting topics, and another channel that focuses specifically on car facts. We also have a podcast where I talk about all sorts of cool stuff. Thanks for watching.
Take care.